The Sundance Film Festival has, for decades, been a consistent fixture on the festival circuit. But just because you haven't been able to enjoy 2 snowy cinematic weekends in Park City doesn't mean you've never seen a Sundance film. So, here are our picks for the 10 best movies ever to come out of Sundance. First things first, film festivals are a blast. If you've never been and have a chance to go to one, do not pass it up. They are a collection of everything from across the spectrum of genre, budget, experience, and perspective. These are all movies that didn't get scooped up by the studio system, meaning there's an independent flair to the films, that there's a sense of something totally different in the snowfall in Park City, Utah every January. So, to start with, I'll break down our picks by a few different genres, but then we'll shift gears into what festivals like Sundance have to offer. And, since I've already made a reference to snow, let's start with the chills. Man, I'm already sorry about that joke. Horror might not be the first thing you think of at film festivals, but indie horror has always been a thriving and accessible genre to fledgling filmmakers. What better way to find the next big thing than the creatively fertile grounds of the festival circuit? Sundance has certainly held up its end of the bargain on that front. On a personal note, The Babadook revitalized my own interest in horror after its Sundance premiere, and our most recent batch of horror tastemakers all showed off at Sundance with the likes of Jordan Peele's Get Out, Ari Aster's Hereditary, and Robert Eggers' The Witch. Talk to Me played at midnight in Park City more recently in 2023, but for our number 10 pick, we're going farther back to 1999 and the Blair Witch Project.
The creepiest, creepiest story about her that I ever heard was that 2 men were out hunting, and they were camped near the cabin or something that she's supposed to haunt.
No.
And they disappeared off the face of the earth.
No.
Really?
Okay, it's all right, Ingrid. I'm just telling a scary story, but it's not true.
It's not true.
It's tough to undersell the kind of pop culture phenomenon the Blair Witch Project became. My house backed up to the woods in 1999, and just walking from my car to the back door required real bravery the night after I saw it. But beyond my own imagination and cowardice, the film launched an entire subgenre of horror. Filmmakers had dipped their scary toes into the found footage wing of horror cinema before, and the style eventually wore out its welcome, but the Blair Witch Project made it interesting and viable in an incredible new way. More than that, it was a no-budget experiment, just a good idea that got seen and blew up from there, which, no matter how you feel about this particular film, is one of the great things about premiering at a festival. If horror is easy to make cheap, the other end of the spectrum is science fiction. At least in the lasers and space sense of the genre. But making good sci-fi on the cheap is an art unto itself. I'd argue some of the best examples of the genre are the ones that had to get fiscally creative. Sundance gave us Another Earth, a film that would have just been a very good indie drama if it weren't for that whole other Earth showing up in the premise. Jeff Nichols' Take Shelter walks a fine sci-fi fantasy line in a very cool way. Ditto Swiss Army Man, which, if nothing else, was a great dry run for the Daniels' Everything Everywhere All at Once. But there is a movie that premiered at Sundance that did harder sci-fi than all of these in Duncan Jones's Moon.
Why don't you take a pill, bake a cake, go read the encyclopedia? You're a tough guy now?
What, are you gonna stab me?
No, I'm a peaceful warrior. I'm a lover, I'm not a fighter.
Put the knife down.
Hey,
I want to look underneath there. Put the knife down.
No, I'm not gonna
Get
give
out.
you the knife.
Just get out of the way.
Take it easy.
Just go with the knife.
Don't ever tell me what to do, okay?
A claustrophobic two-hander starring one guy as both hands, Moon is a sci-fi chamber play. In spite of the limited sets and the lack of a cast outside of Sam Rockwell, Moon still manages to do enough to seem expansive in all those far-flung space adventure ways. The tech and the production design are futuristic, but not exceedingly so. The premise of a lone worker operating a mining facility on the moon isn't far-fetched either. What it does better than anything, though, is skipping the hard sci-fi trappings of man versus space monster in favor of man versus self. As Sam Bell counts down to a trip home while his actual humanity comes into question, the moment another one of him shows up, Moon is less concerned with the science side of things than it is with the fiction side. It raises questions about mortality and reality and mankind's future alongside our own innovation, and all in the trim silhouette of a bottle episode. Moon is festival-worthy hard sci-fi on a small scale done about as well as it can be. If you've ever been to a film festival, you know that walking out of one movie and into another can be a wonderfully jarring thing. Because at Sundance, you might trudge through the snow from a sci-fi film into a documentary. That's what we're doing here. Documentaries are a staple of Sundance, and it's premiered more than its share of fascinating nonfiction over the years. Paris is Burning and Dogtown and Z-Boys shed light on communities that otherwise might have stayed obscured. When We Were Kings and Hoop Dreams are two of the best sports docs ever made. Murderball and their prosumer cameras and improvised lighting is proof that a film can have maximum impact out of a minimum budget. Man on Wire built tension as tight as the titular wire the titular man was on. Super Size Me became a cultural phenomenon. But what we're going with, and to be honest, maybe there's no other reason than it was on my list first alphabetically, because all of these documentaries are great, I'm going with Chris Smith's American Movie.
This chick, man, is going to be working, doing a haunted house off to the side, so you get some really cool interior stuff there. You know what I'm saying? You ever see Manhattan? You ever see The Seventh Seal, where they have these great dialogues with these great backgrounds? Yeah. You know, talking about the plague and there's a gargoyle in the back.
Chronicling the struggle to create a film with an independent film that premieres at a film festival is a nesting doll of intrigue. The story of a would-be filmmaker battling his own demons, facing down his own sense of self-worth, and taking on the always uphill challenge of creating art in a collaborative medium, American Movie is as funny as it is tough to watch at times. It's a movie for anybody who's wanted to give up on their dreams, because watching Mark Borchardt plow ahead towards his is downright inspirational. And that shares something with the spirit of a film festival. So, maybe that's more the reason why I picked it, not the alphabetical thing. One of the genres perhaps least associated with the festival circuit is comedy. And like some kind of weird joke, that means I'm spending our number 7 slot talking about it. One would be mistaken to sleep on Sundance's comedy chops. The entries you might find on the slopes of Park City run the entire gamut. The goofy absurdist like Napoleon Dynamite, or the sweetly absurdist like Hunt for the Wilder People. The dramedies like Other People or The Big Sick. The underappreciated ensemble gems like Big Night or The Overnight. Even All-Timer House Party premiered at Sundance way back in 1990, but for this spot, we're giving it to one of the most sharply hysterical filmmakers we've ever been a fan of, in Armando Iannucci and In the Loop.
Liza.
Yeah, hey.
Hey, I just want to say congratulations. Your paper got a major citation. You must be psyched that Karen brought it up.
Yeah, well, that was, her call, not mine.
You couldn't write a paper that clashes more violently with the current climate than the one you wrote if you were trying. And it seems like you almost were trying.
I wasn't trying,
okay.
Believe me.
For his feature film debut, Armando Iannucci picked up where he left off with his BBC series, The Thick of It. And while the ins and outs of hapless bureaucrats are always hilarious, particularly in the hands of Iannucci, I'm picking this film here because it represents an opportunity that film festivals present. To be able to expand his style from radio to TV to feature film that can premiere to an audience primed to appreciate it is huge, and undoubtedly led to Iannucci continuing his growth into Veep and The Death of Stalin. Two projects that, as far as this YouTube channel is concerned, are two of the best and sharpest satires of all time. I won't say it's specifically because of Sundance that In the Loop was made, seen, and ultimately nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay at the Academy Awards, but it certainly didn't hurt anything. With our next few picks, let's move into a few categories that every good festival needs. First, we're going with the old reliable midnighters. Now, that's a term that might mean a little something different to everybody, but a fun midnighter to me is kinda genre, kinda pulpy, a little rough around the edges, and destined to become some sort of cult classic. And Sundance has seen plenty of each cruise into Park City. Grindhouse pulp like Hobo with a Shotgun premiered at Sundance, as did the monstrously weird The Greasy Strangler. Nazi zombie exploitation flick Dead Snow was picked up for distribution at Sundance, and an argument can be made for films like Be Kind Rewind in this category as well. But for our number 6 slot, we can't not give it to Black Dynamite.
Listen, sucker. I'm blacker than the ace of spades and more militant than you and your whole damn army put together. And while you out there chanting at rallies and browbeating politicians, I'm taking out any money front sucker on a Hummel that gets in my way.
Never have I seen Bad on Purpose done quite so well. Blending modern comedic sensibilities with 70s blaxploitation aesthetics, the film is perfect as a spoof or homage or love letter or whatever you want to call it. Beyond how good it is, the reason it makes this list is the reason it got made. Black Dynamite is a parody of a very specific time and place in film history by a group of people who adore it. They shot it on period-accurate film stock. They stood up into boom mics, and then they premiered it at Sundance, where it sold without question. The whole story of Black Dynamite includes a deep and abiding love of movies, and I'd like to think that recognizing that is part of the reason Sundance brought it in.
I'm Black Dynamite.
Dynamite, dynamite.
Now, before I move on to the next category, I need to be clear. What I'm about to say, I say with absolute love and reverence. It is by no means derogatory. I cannot stress this enough. Our fifth spot is what I very affectionately call festival bullshit. It's not a comment on the quality or designed to write them off as some sort of froofy nonsense. It's really just a catch-all term that's fun to say. Festival bullshit movies are that specific brand of big swings that feel too strange to exist, too impossible to be made in the studio system. They take strange chances for the love of the game, and it covers a lot of ground. This is Patton Oswalt going dramatic for the first time with Big Fan. It's Michael Haneke remaking his own movie with funny games. It's the bonkers Little Mermaid take that is The Lure. It's a whole movie about eternity seen through the cutout eye holes of a plain white sheet in a ghost story. There's a comedy about bumbling terrorists planning an attack in Four Lions. These movies are all moving, affecting, and just out there enough that a film festival might be the only place you get to see them. And for our pick, because, I don't know, chronologically it's first, because again, these are all great, we're going with Jim Jarmusch's Stranger Than Paradise.
I'm leaving. I'm going to Cleveland.
It's a beautiful town.
It's hard to get more film festival-y than Jim Jarmusch, but his debut feature starring a drummer from Sonic Youth does a pretty good job of it. Moreover, in keeping with the headline of this video, it's a film that did what a good festival film should do. It changed things. Stranger Than Paradise was the tip of an art house spear that stuck around all the way through the 90s. There's a relatable boredom to the movie that seems unique somehow. It's avant-garde and cool and approachable all in equal measure, and may very well be the perfect movie to describe my loving moniker, festival bullshit. Now that we're squarely in the what festivals are for section of this movie list, let's talk about debuts. What purpose could be more noble for a film festival than giving young auteurs their first break? What better place to make your first impression as a filmmaker than the snowy slopes of Park City? Karen Kusama's debut feature, Girl Fight, was also a debut for Michelle Rodriguez at Sundance in 2000. Tangerine brought the modern neo-realist work of Sean Baker's iPhone to the screen. Martin McDonagh's debut, In Bruges, included a stop in Park City, but going back to the early 90s, a trio of filmmakers that helped define cool in the decade got their starts in Sundance as well, with Kevin Smith's quick-stop opus Clerks, Robert Rodriguez's no-budget action film El Mariachi, and our number 4 pick, Quentin Tarantino's Reservoir Dogs.
We're going to be using aliases on this job. Under no circumstances do I want any one of you to relate to each other by your Christian names. And I don't want any talk about yourself personally.
The indie movement in the 90s is deserving of its own video, but Tarantino's pastiche-fueled brand of cool wasn't just along for the ride, it was leading the way. With a skinny ties and Ray-Bans aesthetic, K-Billy's super sounds of the 70s soundtrack, and a non-linear structure so skillfully crafted it would inspire a generation of homage itself, Reservoir Dogs announced the arrival of something new, albeit something heavily influenced by something old. If film festivals are indeed a celebration of the medium, what better type of film to celebrate than one that holds movies in such high regard? The lens through which Tarantino shot Reservoir Dogs is uniquely his, making it a debut that's more than deserving of a spot on this list. One step past a debut is a splash. Maybe it's not your first movie, but it's the one that got you noticed. The one that launches you into the next phase of your career. Bigger budget, more spectacle, higher stakes, the pressure. 4 Weddings and a Funeral was the British comedy that eventually brought us Notting Hill and Love Actually from Richard Curtis. Sex, Lies, and Videotape got Steven Soderbergh's name out and about in a very real way, while Memento debuted at Sundance and impressed everybody, Soderbergh included, who, on the strength of Memento, reportedly turned down Insomnia so that Christopher Nolan could get his crack at a bigger budget studio project. And Memento would be a great pick here were it not for the fact that we've talked about it plenty over the years. So, for our number 3 slot, we're going to talk about John Watts' Cop Car instead.
No way! Quick, get in.
It's hard to jump straight from an indie gem to blockbuster success, but that's exactly what John Watts did with Cop Car. The story of 2 joyriding kids stealing a corrupt cop's car just moments after he dumped a body out of the trunk is a blast. It's tense in all the right ways, funny when it needs relief, and Kevin Bacon is clearly relishing playing the bad guy. But maybe the most notable thing about the film is how quickly Jon Watts becomes your friendly neighborhood Marvel director. There are filmmakers, even on this list, who got their shot at studio-sized budget after their indie success, but none who cashed in quite like Watts. For the Spider-Man films to be so widely acclaimed and financially successful after a debut like Cop Car speaks to the possibilities Sundance represents. You can get seen, get talked about, and get your shot. Getting near the end here, we do have to acknowledge that it is a competition after all. While all of us in the audience are the real winners for getting to watch movies in the cold, Sundance hands out prizes as well, and the grand jury prizes are some of the most coveted. Todd Solondz's Welcome to the Dollhouse won the dramatic competition in 1996 while establishing his darkly satirical sensibilities. Blood Simple and the Coen brothers won in 1985 with a noirish murder plot that they wrote, shot, and edited themselves, and our number 2 pick won the dramatic honors in 2013, Ryan Coogler's Fruitvale Station.
If you're involved in the fight, get off the train now! Don't make me come in there and pull you off! You, off the train.
What do you mean? I ain't do shit.
Get over.
Fruitvale Station does a little of everything a festival winner should, and a little bit of everything we've talked about so far. Its heart is on its sleeve, it's solid filmmaking, it's highlighting a story that needs to be told to as large an audience as possible. It was Coogler's debut and launched him into franchise filmmaking with his next project, Creed, and eventually Black Panther. Beyond everything else though, the film was nurtured through Sundance's Screenwriters Lab. In short, there's nothing about this movie that isn't a perfect festival film. Finally, let's take a look at what happens when a film starts at Sundance and breaks all the way through to the granddaddy of them all. Sundance, for a fair number of films, has been step 1 on a path that leads to a Best Picture nomination on Oscar night. At press time, Coda in 2021 was the only one to win it all. It won 3 statues actually, so theoretically it ought to win this spot on our list as well, but that's too easy. There have been so many others nominated for the big prize that we need to honor more. Whiplash and Boyhood were nominated in 2014. Call Me By Your Name got a nomination after its 2017 Sundance premiere, ditto Minari in 2020. Little Miss Sunshine, Beasts of the Southern Wild, Manchester by the Sea, and I'm going to stop there because I can't imagine having to pick one, so you know what? I won't. But what do they all have in common? It seems to me that these are small, personal stories that manage to have universal appeal. To be able to relate to a character that looks and acts differently than yourself is a huge part of cinema. That Sundance can give a platform to films that speak directly to you, with characters ranging from an imaginative little girl in the Louisiana bayou to a grown man struggling with guilt in a northeastern fishing village, is kind of the whole point, and why we think all of these films are some of the best Sundance has ever offered. So, what do you think? Did we miss some of your Sundance favorites? How do you feel about film festivals in general? Let us know in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe for more CineFix movie lists.